Hashem. Today's daf yomi is Zevachim Mem Zayin, Zevachim 47, and we're going to start on the bottom of Vavam Beis, 2 lines from the bottom on 46b. It says the Gemara, Amar Rebbe Lazar, Chata sheshachta l'shem chulin is kashera. That let's say you slaughtered a sin offering for the purposes of a chulin offering, then it's going to be kosher. As we had said, that Rav said if you slaughtered it for a different kodshim, it's not kosher, but for chulin it's kosher. But mishum chulin, but if you thought that it was a chulin offering, if you thought it was not sacred, then we're going to say psula, it's disqualified. Mean to say you didn't even realize it was a sacred animal. Can the buy minei Shmuel mi Rav Huna? As Shmuel once asked Rav Huna, Minayin, we're on top of 47a, Minayin misasik b'kodshim shu pasul. How do we know that if you're just misasik, that means to say, Rashi says, Shochet kodshim v'lo b'kavana. You slaughter the sacred animal without any intent. Al k'misasik b'dvar machirim. It's like you're engaged in other things. Then under those circumstances, it's disqualified, as it says, you have to be aware that you're slaughtering it before God. You have to be aware that it's a slaughter for the purpose is of at least that you are aware that you're slaughtering before God. Amar, so Shmuel responds to Rav Huna. He says, Zubi Adenu he says, yeah, this much we know. This we already knew. However, we learned out from there that it was a mitzvah, that it's ideal. But how do we know it's essential? That if you don't do it, it's disqualified. Amrlei. So about that, he responds, it says, that according to you have to be aware of it when you do the offering. So we learned in our Mishnah, according to the Tana of our Mishnah, the machshava, the thought that can disqualify a sacrifice, follows the one who is bringing the offering, the one who is doing the service, i.e. the Kohen. So Gemara says, in Masnisin, our Mishnah is the Loki Aitana. Our Mishnah, it says that we follow the thoughts of the one who's doing the action. That follows our Mishnah, but it's inconsistent with a different Tana. The Tanya, Amar Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi, Shamati Shabala Mefagel. Rabbi Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Yossi, I heard that the owners can also be Mefagel. They can also disqualify the offering with their intent, which is a wild concept that one person can do the action and the intent of the other one while that action is taking place can disqualify it. And Rav Yosef Engel wrote a sefer Gvura Shmona on this, Gvura Shmonim, where he talks about, well, if that's the case, how come a sota ever tests the woman who's accused? Because she could always disqualify it with her intent, and then the milcha will never be a valid offering. And he gives 80 answers to that question. And one of the answers is that she's not the actual owner of that offering. Amar Rava, my time at Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi. What's the basis of Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi's position? Amar Kol, it's based upon the fact that the pasuk says, "V'ikriv hamakriv," that the one who comes close, the one who is offering hamakriv karbano, and this is written. Rashi says in the parasha of Nesachim, "V'ikriv hamakriv karbano Hashem." So we see from here that the one who is coming, who is the Baal, is called the makriv karbano. So therefore, he's also included within the verse that says the makriv should not have an improper thought. Amar Abaye, Rebbe Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi, that we just saw, who says that the Baalim, the owners, can disqualify with their thought. So Abaye says Rebbe Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi is also the saying, a similar idea to Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Kulu Sviru, these three opinions are all of the position that Zeh Mechashev v'Zeh Oved. have machshava, that if one person has the thought and the other one does the action, that's considered an act, a thought that will impact the action. So Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi Hadamram. We just said Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Eliezer's position is the Tanan or the Tanya. Ashoichet Rovei Shlitasu Kshera. If an idolater asks a Jew to do the slaughter, then we're going to say it's not going to be considered a slaughter for idolatry, whereas Rabbi Eliezer he disqualifies it because he says that since an idolater has as a baseline a thought for idolatry, and so therefore it's as though you slaughter for idolatry, even though the one doing the slaughter didn't have that intent, but since the owner of the animal did, it's going to be considered a slaughter for idolatry. Rabbi Eliezer, and now the third opinion is Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar did Tanan, Klal Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Kol shein kosher latzniya v'ein matzniyu kamohu v'huchshar ozeh v'etzniyu v'achar v'hotziyu nislayev zeh b'machshava shel zeh. This is a law from Shabbos that you're only liable for carrying if it's something that is an object that is considered choshev, is considered of importance. So if there's an object where one person thinks it is and the other one doesn't, and the one who thinks it is puts it away, and then meaning to say he thinks it's he's saving it, and the other one comes along and takes that object and carries with it, then the one who carries it is going to be liable. He's going to be liable because the other one considered it something worth carrying. So now the Gemara breaks down the three opinions. Travayu Islahu de Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi. Both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar agree in the case of Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi that you're going to be liable, that the owner will be liable. Why? Because they say even outside where intent is less significant, they say that your thought is going to be relevant. So bifnim mibaye, for sure in a case where you're inside the temple, where the intent is so much more important, would we say it's going to be able to have an impact? Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi, whereas Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi, who only says that in the case of the owner could be mefagel, he doesn't agree with the other two positions. Why? Because maybe he only says his position when it's inside the temple area. That's where we say this idea. But we wouldn't say it outside. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Islahu de Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, who said his position in the case of Shabbos, he'll also agree with Rabbi Eliezer's idea about the case of Shlita. Why? And if we say the idea of intent matters by Shabbos, by Vodas Kochavim, by idolatry, and idolatry is more similar to the sacrifices that are done inside, meaning to say that where the intent is the entire essence. And Rabbi Eliezer lays like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, but Rabbi Eliezer does not agree with Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar's position about Shabbos. It says, because then we only say by idolatry because it's similar to the inside, to the courtyard of the temple. Aval Shabbos, but when it comes to Shabbos, then each person's own intent is important because Melachas Machshavas as Torah. The Torah prohibits Melachas Machshavas. The Torah prohibits Boker Tov. Any malacha, the Torah requires that in order to be prohibited, it has to be a work that you have intent for it. Meaning, so you need to have your own intent. And in that case, you don't have your own intent, so therefore you're not going to be liable based upon the other person's intent. So Hajanoach Beishamai, we're in the bottom of 47a. We will return to you to this chapter of Beishamai, this beautiful chapter, which discusses the laws of Pigul. And now we go on to an entirely different chapter, entirely different topic. Well, not entirely different, but we now go on to the chapter called Ezel Makomon, which is something that we should be familiar with because it's part of the Karbanos section of our siddur. And many have the custom to recite this every single morning as we recite our Karbanos. Now, one of the reasons why Ezum Makomon, there are several reasons why it's recited every day, but one of the reasons is because Ezum Makomon is the only chapter in the entire Mishnah, the only chapter where there's no Tanaitic dispute. Everybody is in agreement. So in the Gemara, there's disputes, but in the Mishnah, there's no disputes. Ezul Makomon Shel Zevachim. So says there's no dispute. Yeah. They all agree. Ezul Makomon Shel Zevachim. What is the place where the sacrifices are brought? Kodshe Kodshim Shlitasam Mitzafim. When it comes to the Kodshe Kodshim, that's going to be in the north, meaning to say, we know that there are two different levels of sacrifices. There's the most sacred, like the Ola, the Chatas, the Asham. They're in the north in part of the courtyard. When you come in from the east, it's to the right. If you're facing the entrance into the Shar Nicanor, it's to the right. And we know that there are three positions we saw already in our tractate about what exactly it means by the north, but that's for another time. The bull and the goat of Yom Kippur, not only are they slaughtered in the north, also kibul damim b'klisharis b'tzafon. The blood of them is received in a sacred utensil in the north. The damonton hazaya al ben abayim, and their blood requires sprinkling between the poles of the ark, vala parochas, and on the curtains of the ark, v'mizbeach hazav, and on the golden altar, and matana achas me'akeves. And if you're even missing one application of their bloods, we discussed already in this tractate how many times the blood needs to be applied. Then if you're even missing one, it's disqualified. Shiyari adam, and the remnants of that blood, will be poured onto the base of the external courtyard. And if for some reason you didn't do it, you have not disqualified the sacrifice. Next category, Paraman Israfim, Visi'irim Israfim. The bulls and the goats that are burnt outside the temple, that meaning to say the Kohanim don't eat them, but they're burnt outside the camps of Jerusalem. This is the Par Elam Davar. If the community makes a mistake, and the bull, if the Kohen makes a mistake, they're brought out to the Beis Hadeshen, and the Sirei of the Avodas Kochavim. So they are shchitasam mitzafon. They're slaughtered in the north. The kibul damim b'klisharis mitzafon. You receive their blood in the sacred utensil in the north. The daman tawan azaya al parochas, and their blood is then sprinkled on the curtain. V'mizbeach hazav, and on the golden altar inside the sanctuary, the mizbeach hazav. Matana achas me'en, we're top of mem zayin on the base. Matana achas me'en. Even one application of their blood will disqualify the offering. And Shiyari Adam, and the remnants of that blood will be poured towards the western part of the altar, the foundation of the Mizbeach HaChitzon, of the external altar. And if he did not apply the blood there, well, he caved. If he did not pour the blood there, it's still okay. Yeah, meaning it's not disqualified. And the bull of Yom Kippur and the other ones that are burned, they're all burnt on what's called the Beis Hadeshen. That's a place that they would take out the ashes of the Mizbeach HaChitzon, of the external courtyard. And so this was a place outside of Yerushalayim where they basically burnt there. This place called Beis Hadeshen. Okay, so the Gemara has a question. We start off by saying in our Mishnah that the Kachim is slaughtered in the north, and then it says the bull and the goat of Yom Kippur is slaughtered in the north, and the blood is received in a utensil in the north. So how come it doesn't say the Kachim, the blood is also received in the north? So the Gemara says, why didn't the Mishnah also say the kibul damon b'klisharis b'tzafon? Why didn't the Mishnah also say that the blood of the kachim, i.e. the olah, the chatas, the asham, is also received in a sacred utensil in the north? Martha's because given the Ika Asham Mitzora, because there's one carbon. We know that there are 5 Ashamas. There's the Asham Nazir, Asham Mitzora, Asham Meila, Asham Shivcha Charufa, and the Asham Taloi. And one of those is the Asham that's brought from Mitzora when he finishes the leper, when he finishes his period of Tumah. So we know that the Asham Mitzora, there the blood is not received in a utensil, it's Kibul Biyad, it's received in the hand. And so therefore, the Kibul Damo Biyadhu, so since that blood is received in his hand, so therefore Shaire, so therefore the Mishnah left it over and it didn't include it because not all of the Kochi Kochim is received in a utensil. The Gemara says, wait, below, V'akatani lo l'kaman, but don't we learn later on? Don't we learn in the Mishnah on Nun Daled? Isn't it going to say Asham Nazir of Asham Mitzora, Shchitasam Mitzafon, Bekibol Daman Bekli Sharas Mitzafon? It says later on that the Asham Mitzora and the Asham Nazir, but the Asham Nazir and the Asham Mitzora, the Asham Nazir and the Asham Mitzora, their slaughtering is in the north, and the receiving of their blood is in a sacred utensil in the north. So we see that they do have to receive their blood in the north. Not the Asham Mitzora is not by the hand. So the Gemara says Mikara Safar. So the Gemara says that first the Tana of our Mishnah thought. At first the Tana of our Mishnah thought that Kibul Damo Biyadhu. He thought it was in the hand, Shiyare, until he left it over. But then once he saw that it also needed a utensil, then he decided to include it, Hadar Tanya, and then he included it. Meaning to say, at first he thought that since it was only by the hand, we'll leave it over. But then he saw that the blood of the Asham Mitzora requires both the hand and a utensil. How so? The Tanya V'lakach, it says in the Brisa that the pasuk says the Kohen will take from the blood of the Asham and he should place it on the basically the right ear and the right thumb and the right big toe of the Mitzora. It says V'lakach Yachol B'kli. I might think he's supposed to receive this blood in a utensil. Tam over Manasan. Not Nesina Be'atzmo Shel Kohen. Just like when he places it, it has to be done with the finger. Also, when he receives the blood, he receives it directly into his hands. And I might also think that the blood that of the Asham Mitzora, which is sprinkled on the altar, is also done with the hand. It can't be. Why? That it's like the chatas, and just like the chatas need utensil, so does the asham. Min says ataomer asham mitzora. So therefore, by the asham mitzora, there will be shnei kohanim mikabel nestama. There will be 2 kohanim there to receive the blood. Echad biyad ve'echad b'kli. One is receiving it with his hand, and one is receiving it in the utensil. The one who received the blood of the Asham Mitzora in a utensil, comes to the altar and he sprinkles it. And the one who received the blood in his hand, he comes next to the Mitzora and he applies the blood to him. Mitzora, he comes to the Mitzora and he puts the blood on his right ear, on his right thumb, and on his right big toe. Okay, so we're going to continue now, but that's just today's daf. We'll continue